kick your ass. What's going on there, and the reason that that ritual exists, is this thing that we call embodied cognition. So if you make yourself stand up and be fierce, you're going to be fierce. Well, it's actually raising your testosterone level, lowering cortisol, changing the hormonal balance in your vagus nervous system. And you only have to hold these poses for 2 minutes. That's like the warrior pose in yoga, right? How you feel afterwards. Well, the haka is like that. Only the haka is a group effort. And it actually causes everybody's hormonal response levels to get very close to each other completely across the group. And so this is this like entrainment, but it's also hormonal telepathy. This can't be replicated by the aliens. They don't have hormones. They can't deal with hormones. They are right now trying to breed their hybrids to have a balance of their kind of telepathy and enough hormones that they can interact with us. Okay, but too much hormones, and then the hybrids can have episodes of uncontrollability. All right. And there's all different kinds of stuff to way deep going down into the insects and the hybrids and so on. But the insects and the ant people they were not to help. So someone was recording the insects, the hierarchy, insect greater than the human, higher, taller, more powerful. And they were probably recording the clones that the insects used to do the dirty work, because they cloned the reptiles, they cloned the little grays, the big grays, et al. So Sims is quite correct. All of these beings are clones. There's not thousands of species out there the way that, Corey Good and these other guys would have you believe. There's no space slave trade going on. The millions of abductees are taken away every night and returned the next day because the invasion doesn't want us to know that we're being invaded. And so they got to return these, and then they're going to wipe their minds. Now, they will do things like, threaten. They've got their own security force to protect their implants into our society. And it gets really complicated from this point forward. And there's dozens and dozens of ways to think about this and certain things to get involved with here. However, in a context, so that's part of our LARP, is that we have real world evidence that this is going on. We can read abduction tales online in near real time. They write them up this morning about being abducted last night. You can read them in Filipino, you can read them in Arabic, you can read them in Swahili, as far as I know. They're just out there everywhere in all the different languages. It's cross-cultural. They're all doing the same things. And apparently we're being invaded in a big way at this point. Now, all of the abductees report that on top of this whole mess of the invasion are the insects. And that the insects' idea is that everything shall be in its place. Everything shall be orderly. Everything shall be nice and tight and so on. Now we're going to go back to high performance and the SEALs and so on, right? The Navy SEALs and these people that investigate high performance have found some things out through their investigation these past few years about humans. One of the things they found out was that humans desperately need chaos. We need the intrusion of stuff from the outside that jangles our thoughts, that makes us think of something. We need the shock of the new, okay? And if we don't have that, we will do things to create it. This is why utopian societies, even those really well-engineered ones with money behind them, fail in less than 2 generations. All utopian societies ever created on this planet have gone bust as a utopian society in less than 2 generations. So less than 30 years, about 30 to 40 years, a generation being, say, 20 plus years, right? Even those that were funded by Henry Ford. Henry Ford created ideal compounds for people to grow material in Latin America that would be used for fuel, for food, and this kind of thing. He supplied schools, places to live, everything they needed, an ideal utopian society, and they didn't even last 15 years. And they had money behind them. And it's because people say, it's a prison, basically, right? Because without the new, everything else is a prison. We are going to go in, should we lose this battle, humanity will be relegated to a little tiny miserable activity within this greater mass of people living on planet Earth, and will be the lowest level, will have no rights or anything, And we'll live in a society that is so structured, you cannot deviate from what the people on high say. And they will know if you even think about the deviation because they can control and pick up on your thoughts. That's what we're actually fighting for, is freedom of mind, of the ability to be human, to have our own unstructured evolution, our own brushes with death, our own great exhilarating moments. All of this would be denied every single human because, as far as the space aliens are concerned, emotions are not very useful. They kind of need them, but they don't know they need them, and that's another discussion entirely. They're trying to engineer for that, but that's where we're at with these insects. Now, the insects, many people okay, so humans are self-reporting. We like to talk about ourselves. 68% of all media activity on all the social networks are selfies. 68%. Selfies with your food, selfies with your dog, selfies with Rex because you happen to see him at the restaurant, all of this kind of thing, right? And so we know we like to talk about ourselves. Well, some people talk about ourselves in our most adventuresome moments, okay? And so some people reveal all. A subset of those people that reveal all are the psychonauts, those individuals that take psychedelics, that venture outside of themselves within their body, within this planet. And this is an entirely different subject about true hallucinations and not delusion, and what tripping with psychedelics truly is. And it can take hours to go down that. However, something to note about that is that when these individuals report on psychedelic trips, and you find them at Arrowwood, at One Fine, a number of these various different websites where they catalog this, where they have experiencers unfettered ability to just put out a description of everything that happened to them. If you data mine this, you'll find that there's a subset of these people, maybe as high as 16%, that go somewhere where their psychedelic journey is not about themselves. It's not about their internal insight to their, how they feel about their mother and this kind of thing, but is rather an excursion outside of their body. And they meet the other and they discuss things with the other. And I have personally experienced that myself. And I have had interactions with two beings that I would call mantids or insectolins. In this space in which that occurred, they don't provide themselves with names, just as I didn't provide myself with a name. So, and it's in the same kind of sense that Rex is the name of your body. Okay, it's not the name of the consciousness looking out through those eyes. That has no name that is meaningful in this materium. That same kind of concept exists when you meet these other beings in this non-space that is achieved by great psychedelic trips, right? And so I've interacted with these, with reptilians at that level. And they were really the first one was really kind of pissed that I got there and tried to mentally force me out. And he and I were both rather shocked when he was unable to do this. And it had to do with his ability in that space to try and push me out with telepathy because I was disrupting. It was, from my perspective, it was a laboratory of his that I had fallen into, so to speak, right? And he was a very aged senior kind of an insect. And I learned a great deal about him, about all of these mantids in interaction with him. And then later on with this other younger mantid that I got involved with, who was not quite in the same space, but we needn't go into there. But these beings, as I say, have no compassion. They don't have emotion as we understand it. Now, in other psychedelic, and you'll see that is replicated in the writings that people make at Arrowwood and these other sites about in that 16% that goes somewhere. Of the 16% that goes somewhere, you'll see that they talk about meeting Terence McKenna's machine elves. And I've interacted with those beings, and they're sort of like a caretaker. There's not a lot there. But you'll
never heard of those.
The machine elves?
Yeah.
Oh, they're really cool. I actually did a number of sculptures and shown them. They guard the land of the dead in a way that you might think. They look like elves, or dwarves, or little garden gnomes. They're small little beings. They have a specific function. They're a construct. You can interact with them. They're sort of like an NPC in a video game. They've got a good set of abilities though, and they're famous, okay, for in terms of dealing with them. Go and look it up, and you'll see that there are just vast quantities of literature about them. Some of the same people will also run into these insect beings, and the mantids are well known within this these contexts, and their characteristics are also well known. That they're extremely cold, there's no emotion in them. They have what we might think of as like satisfaction when things are working their way, and dissatisfaction when they're not. They're extremely ruthless and brutal. They have no real gender. So it's not like mantids down here that you're likely to meet, they're all female, right? Because the males live very briefly just to impregnate the females and then are destroyed. These mantids that you run into are neither gender. So they mustn't reproduce in some way that does not involve that, because they don't exude any kind of a gender thing. It's helpful to think of them as being male simply because it provides a context or framework for their perceived brutality and callousness, okay? Because they are, from our perspective, quite brutal and callous. They simply don't care about your pain. You can lie there and be in pain until you die, and they would not in any way move themselves unless it was to their gain. And so that's the kind of thing that motivates them. They don't have what we would think of as an idiosyncratic motivation that we now know arises from our vagus system as our hormonal balance changes. It causes us to be motivated to do things. They don't operate that way. So it's very much a strange interaction dealing with those guys. And that is not simply my conclusion. You'll find that replicated in a lot of the literature. And I've also found that when I've interacted with non-insect other beings in that same space, they all say, oh yeah, those bugs, you just can't deal with those bugs, that they always cause problems and so on. And so, from that point on, well, I guess we better start dealing with questions.
Let me ask a couple questions, because the experience that I had when I was less than 2 years old, and I'm in my crib, and I remember these beings looking at me and I'm looking at them, and I didn't get any bad vibes or scared. Like, and when I go back thinking about it, I don't get scared. It's like one of those things that's so surreal. You want somebody to say, hey, I've got a picture of that moment. Here it is. You're right. Because it's like, you just feel crazy when you talk about it, man. Like the hair is like standing up on my arms right now, like crazy, just thinking about it. It's freaking me out. But it was.
Well, wait. The reason that that's happening is because you have an implant in a thought. You have a thought implant in your brain that they put there that causes this reaction. It's the same with all kinds of abductees. They have that same, oh my God, I'm going to freak out and dissolve kind of reaction.
But what did they want? Like, I don't remember them taking me anywhere. I just remember them looking at me and I'm looking at them. And
okay, well, look at it this way. They don't want 3 out of 5 generations of dogs that they're breeding. They're just steps along the way. So they probably want you for your DNA, for some component. They don't want you as an individual. I'm certain they don't care about you as an individual in that sense, but you're necessary in their breeding program. Why they don't just do the genetic thing, since they do genetic manipulation and just create beings out of whole cloth, I think I understand some of that. So if we wanted to look at it in a really screwy way, okay, I think they're trying to create soul containers. All right, so most people don't understand what the soul is, and I don't really want to go deep into this, but humans have souls. Not all beings do. None of the Greys do, none of the reptiles do, none of the Nordics do, and it's unclear as to whether the insects do as we think of it. The insects undoubtedly participate in reincarnation as we do, but they may not have souls as we think about it, or as we actually do. And it may be that these insects, for their own purpose and their own understanding, are attempting to create a vehicle that can interact with us, that can be like them and under their control, that can still be a soul receptacle. Because I think in a broad brush, I think this is what has happened, okay? That the Nemo created us millions of years ago, hundreds of millions maybe. I just don't know how long ago. Since that time, the Nummo have left Earth because, as far as they were concerned, their goal was to simply seed the planet with beings that would be capable of growing or not on their own, and it's not up to the Nummo to determine our fate. And so they go off. Since then, other beings come here, and some of them we've got in our, the Elohim, okay, that came on down and kicked the shit out of everybody in the Middle East, and we made a religion around them, right? And we've had the Anunnaki that were here before the Elohim, who took us and took gold and all of this kind of thing and made us into slaves, this sort of thing, right?
You think they were different? You think they were
Oh yeah,
separate?
oh yeah, yeah. I've got some, Mauro Biglino, the